Welcome to the Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil Vesh, your host and the founder and CEO of BoostSolo. And I'm really excited to have Caesar Marin with me today. Now, he has a really fascinating story to share with us. In less than 2 years, Cesar went from producing shows at CNN, which he did for 25 years, to basically becoming a thought leader for people over 50 who are using psychedelics responsibly. So, Cesar, welcome to the show, and we can't wait to hear your story.
Nikhil, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored. I'm humbled to be on here with you. I've seen what you were doing. I see how you're empowering solopreneurs through their stories of sharing, you know what I mean? Those, trials and tribulations that we all have as we navigate these waters. So, like I said, I'm honored and humbled to be here on your show.
Well, thank you, Cesar. And I want to dive right in because this is a really interesting journey that you've been on and are still on. So let me start by asking you, what was the spark that sort of led you down this solopreneur path? And how did microdosing become such an integral or central part of this mission?
That's a great question because the spark came from necessity, right? The spark came from being laid off at CNN and getting that sense of what am I going to do next? Like there's not a lot of people hiring, 55-year-old TV producers. TV itself is a dying media. TV news itself is a dying media. And I worked at CNN. I worked in sports. I was producing sports shows. So there wasn't really a market for me to go and look for a job. And it was one out of that necessity to do something. And out of hearing my mom's voice in the back of my head, always saying, hey, do something on your own. Stop being a sailor on a big ship. Like, sail your own ship. And, if you have to be the captain, be the captain. If you have to be the steward, be the steward. If you have to mop, mop. But it's your own ship. So it was out of that. And it was out of a moment of, I saw that there was a need, this bridge that needed to be paved between people my generation and the responsible use of psychedelics, especially through microdosing, that then there was that desire to say, you know what, I have my own ship. This is going to be my ship. Cultivating wisdom is going to be my ship. I'm going to sail it. And it's been like all solopreneur journeys. It's been wonderful, and it's been scary, and it's been tumultuous, and it's been beautiful, and it's been everything in between. So it's definitely something different than what I had been doing all of my adult life. But like my mom said, you're never going to work as hard for something until it is yours.
Yeah, no, and we'll definitely get into the beauty and the tumult as we go through this conversation. I'd love to hear more about that. But could I dig a little more into how you ended up with microdosing? Because that's quite a shift from producing sports shows.
Yes, it is. It's a total different shift. And
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that the universe has us exactly where it needs us, right? And it brings these things to us. At the time, this was summer of 2022. At the time, I'm having a bad relationship with cannabis. Cannabis had really gripped me, and at the time, I considered myself an addict. I was addicted to cannabis. If it was there, I was going to consume it, and unintentionally, right? There wasn't any intentions to use it. It was a bad habit. Someone has an experience with psychedelics, summer of 2022, and they tell me about it. Oh, I felt like a child. And this recreational curiosity starts to poke at me. Someone else then tells me, hey, you know what? I had some mushrooms. And I'll be honest with you, I hadn't had a psychedelic experience before the age of 54. Never. It wasn't something that was in my world. It wasn't something I was around. But somehow the mushrooms came and they started talking to me, or they started, approaching me, out of the blue. And it was through a journey of a medium-sized journey of psilocybin, of the active ingredient in mushrooms, that my consciousness really awakens, and then I start to journal, and I start to research as a good journalist. Wait a minute, hold on a second. They're using psychedelics for medicine, and the recreational curiosity became more curiosity into how are people using this, and wait a minute. Through psychedelics, I can change my relationship with the substance that I haven't been able to change. I can really be in tune with who I am. I can be more authentic. I can think more creatively. And it was when I started to microdose, which was November of 2022, the intentions to microdose, the reason why I wanted to microdose was, one, obviously change that relationship I had with cannabis, but number two, figure out what was going to happen after CNN. I hadn't been told yet that I was going to be laid off, but when the medicine came to me and it became part of my life, there was this sense of, don't worry, relax. We're going to close this 25-year chapter and we're going to open up a brand new one. So that's really how microdosing then came into my life, because it sort of helped me to, one, like I said, change that relationship with what was gripping me. And number two, really open up my consciousness and my vision to say, hey, you know what, there's something else you can do. Before you were behind the cameras, now you can be in front of the cameras. Before, it was a different message that you were sending out through CNN. Now you're going to send out your own message. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. And again, obviously stating that before this, I was that typical, stigma against psychedelics. Psychedelics are bad. Psychedelics are for people who, want to get spaced out, whatever that is. And now realizing that no, used responsibly, there's a lot of benefits that can come out of it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story, and you literally sort of brought to life how people talk about when one door closes, another door opens, right? And I love how you turned something that was a challenge and perhaps not the best thing for you into a positive, right? And to do something responsibly. So I think that's a really great lesson. So let me ask you now, in terms of, now we all know the corporate world has a very specific mindset. There's sort of certain challenges you encounter. So what were the biggest shifts you felt, both professionally and personally, moving from sort of the corporate world to this freedom of solopreneurship?
Wow, I think that when you're in the corporate world, especially for as long as I was, right, there's this comfort level that comes with it, right? This comfort level of whether it's a paycheck at the end of the month, whether it's at the end of the week, whether it's the fact that I have insurance, whether it's the fact that, yes, there's these challenges to this job, but there's something bigger, right? There's something bigger that covers me. When you're a solopreneur, you're doing it all on your own. And you have to be, the marketing person. You have to be the accounting person. You have to be, the human resources person. You have to be the person in shipping. You have to be all of it, right? So it was for me, and I'm still learning, right? I'm only 2 years into this journey. Every day I'm learning something new. Every day I'm figuring something out. Every day someone's giving me a tip. Every day, I'm seeing through my own mistakes. Well, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have done it that way. So for me, it was a huge shift, because once you've done something all your entire life, and then you have to completely pivot and do something completely new, this isn't like I have a solopreneur business on how to teach people how to produce TV shows, right? Which is something that I'm
Right.
definitely comfortable doing. This is reinventing myself. I mean, I literally had to reinvent myself to sort of figure out what I was going to do, who I was going to become, how I was going to be present, what my mission was going to be. But the fact of knowing that this is my passion, right? I'm doing this. It doesn't feel like work, even though it is work. I have to work. I have to do things to bring in income and to, be able to have money for marketing and to, run a business. But it's definitely a different change, and I'm learning every day. I think that that's the wonder of it. I'm learning every day, and I'm learning from, podcasts like yours, and I'm learning from people like you. You and I had a wonderful, pre-podcast conversation, which left me with so much wisdom. And that's a bit what the company is about. That's the vision of cultivating wisdom, and it came out of my first big journey, guided journey, where I had this sense that I was being told, go set these buffet tables of wisdom to cultivate a better future. And we all have wisdom in one sense or another. So the fact that now I can gather all this wisdom from all these people who have done it and done it the right way is really magical for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. It is a journey of constant learning, right? I mean, that's one of the threads I've always found with solopreneurs is they always look at challenges and obstacles as learning opportunities, not as obstacles in their way.
Yeah, I've
So
always
you
said
touched on, oh, go ahead.
you have to sometimes be able to look over the obstacles to see the opportunities, but sometimes we see the obstacles and we don't look over them. You know what I mean? We're sort of, looking here trying to figure out how am I going to get around it? We never take that time to take a peek over, okay, what is the what does the opportunity look like, and how do I manage this obstacle to make sure I get to that opportunity?
Yeah, and in a way, you don't have to in the corporate world, right? Because there's so many resources and there's so many ways that obstacles sort of get managed for you. Whereas when you're on your own, like you said, we don't have that luxury. We've got to figure it out ourselves
Exactly.
to move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. There's always a support system when you're in that corporate world where, in the solopreneur world, you have to figure it out yourself if you don't know it.
So you touched on something that I want to dig into a little more. You said you talked about how you sort of had to reinvent yourself, right? Because obviously you're not teaching people how to make television or sports shows. So this is a completely different space. I mean, it's a transformation. So you touched on this a little bit in terms of your profound personal transformation related to microdosing. But can you talk a little bit about how the experience has shaped your brand identity now as this new on this new journey that you're on, and how you use it to connect with your audience?
You and I, well, we talked about this the other day, how it's not so much about the product anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's about the face of the brand. It's about the voice of the brand. It's about the narrative of the brand. It's not so much the physical product itself. And for me, the ability to be able to stand in front of a camera, whether it's my phone, and share these stories with other people is really powerful, right? It's given me that sense of I'm going to share my story, even though it's a story that a lot of people aren't going to talk about, right? It's a story where people can potentially say, wait a minute, you're talking about you're doing something that's illegal, right? Yes, but it's making me a better person, right? I'm not using this as an escape. I'm not using this to, mask anything. I'm using it because it's making me more authentic, right? It's making me more creative. It's making me more empathetic. And in that solopreneur world, you need all of those senses and you need all of those emotions because we have to be vulnerable, right? And we have to celebrate the victories, but at the same time, we have to be able to sort of mourn the losses, but not sit in them. And what really microdosing has done for me has given me that ability, right? That ability to live in the now, that ability to see things, that ability to try to be more creative, that ability to meet someone that I'm working with halfway and be empathetic and listen, right? Not have all the answers for them, but sort of be someone that they get a sense that I'll listen to them. I think that part of the medicine has really helped me in this solopreneur journey, right? That real sense of clarity, of mental clarity that the microdosing has given me. And again, look, there's a lot of talk about microdosing. Like I tell people, don't microdose because you heard Caesar Marin on some podcast say that he microdosed. No, do your homework, educate yourself, find some literature, talk to someone, find a community, find someone else who's microdosing. It's really important to do that, especially with psychedelics. I mean, like I tell people, psychedelics are not for everybody. And I want to preface that also, in the podcast by saying, what, I'm not condoning or advocating that anybody does anything illegal. That's not what we're talking about at all. I'm just here to share my story and how it's changed me. So it has definitely helped me to see things differently. I always wonder, one, what would have been of my life if I would have lost my job at CNN in the conditions where I was, or if microdosing hadn't come into my life. But I'm glad it did. I'm glad it has.
And so I sense there's a very different Cesar that was before and after. And is that true? Because who was the
Yes,
Cesar before? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you
yes,
talked about so
definitely,
much change. Yeah.
definitely. I think that the Caesar from before is the Caesar from before, right? This new Caesar is this heightened sense of that empathy, this heightened sense of love and caring, this heightened sense of being in the moment, this heightened sense of clarity, right? Not that there wasn't before, but before again, it was this corporate comfortness. This okay. This is the time I go in. That's the time I sit down. This is the time I do the show, and so it was very monotonous, right? It was very hamster wheel, but also at the same time that sense of thoughts in the past of if I would have done this or if I would have done that, or why didn't I take that other position? I would have been a senior producer now, or that sense of dread of the future. How much longer am I going to be here at CNN? And, how much longer am I going to have to walk in at 4 o'clock in the morning to do an 8 o'clock show? That's where I was living before, right? Where now it's like there's more clarity of living in this moment, right? That the past is the past. I can't bring that back. And any tapes that happened in the past, I can't replay them, rewind them, or erase them. And anything that's going to potentially happen in the future, it's only going to happen in the future. It's not going to happen right now in my thoughts. So that's definitely the different Caesar from CNN dependency to a substance that is very escapism-ish. Cannabis is I'm not going to say it helps people disassociate and escape, but it can be used to just escape from life itself and go, oh yeah, everything's fine. So that's definitely a different personality, and that's part of who I reinvented myself into.
Okay, and you use it sort of for unleashing your creativity and sort of finding the magic, right, rather than sort of escaping.
Yeah. Completely. It's not microdosing. Like I tell people, microdosing isn't about, I had a bad day at work. Let me go have a little microdose so I can sort of,
right.
No, that's not what it's about.
It's not a crutch.
And the other thing is because microdosing, because it is subperceptual, right? You shouldn't be feeling anything. It's not about what you're feeling. It's about what you're doing, right? Like I work with people who, we go back and we go into their journal. If they get this sense of like, I'm not feeling anything, what am I supposed to be feeling? It's like, wait a minute, let's sort of go back to your journal. Is there anything that's changed in your character? Oh yeah, wait a minute. I've acted differently there. I've, reacted to something differently. That's what microdosing is about. It's about that sense of clarity, living in the now. There's people who've had psychedelic experiences. There's this thing when you're in between the substance leaving your body and you coming to normality, called the afterglow. And most people they literally look like they're glowing, like they have this smile, and have even people who've had challenging journeys. There's this sense of like, oh wait a minute, maybe I get a sense, maybe I see it. It's microdosing is finding that afterglow. I find that when I'm on that perfect protocol, whether I'm doing a 4-week protocol or a 6-week protocol, that when I dial into that afterglow, that sense of like, right now life is beautiful. I have everything I need at this moment. That's when you really become that consciousness of living right now, right? And you're aware of what's going on, and you hear sounds, and you hear things, and you're more empathetic, and you're more clear. So that's the state that, for me, I achieve when I'm on a really good microdosing practice. And again, like I said, there's no intoxication. There's no dizziness. In fact, when I tell people who I work with, the moment you feel that something, then we've gone past the threshold. We need to dial it down.
Right. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. But and actually leads to my next question, which is there's still a lot of stigma, social stigma, and controversy, and as you said, illegal, and people have a lot of negative perceptions of microdosing, right? So, what are specific sort of tactics or brand building strategies that you used that you found to be effective to sort of overcome this resistance, this lack of belief, or also and to build trust with your audience?
It all started with the apparel brand. Right.
Okay.
It all started with creating honest and open conversation. Right. It all started with the potential of wearing a shirt that says microdosing, and someone says, "You microdose? I've heard about that. I've read about that, but I'm scared. But I don't know. But can you cultivate me with a little wisdom?" Right. Or someone says, "Oh, you microdose? So do I. How's it going? What are you microdosing? What protocol are you on?" Because like I tell people, look, the stigma exists, again, part because the government didn't want people to open up, part because it did become much more of a recreational sense, and maybe the medical part wasn't there. And that's why I tell people, this isn't the psychedelics. We're not living through the psychedelics of the 60s right now. We're living through the psychedelics of Johns Hopkins University and NYU, and Emory University here in Atlanta. So when you have that open, honest conversation with people, then we can start to break down the stigma. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to talk to 5 people. 2 of them are going to say, hippie, stoner, go listen to your Grateful Dead 8-track tapes out in the woods and come back and talk to us when you're not high. Go, right? 2 people, I'm going to poke at their childhood curiosity and they're going to go, wait a minute. Psychedelics are being used for medicine? Johns Hopkins University? Yes. I got to find out more. I got to do more research. I got to figure it out. And then, but you're going to have that one person that's going to say, wait a minute. He lost his job and was able to reinvent himself partly through microdosing. I just lost my job. I'm 55 also. Can this maybe help me? And like I said, I don't advocate that anyone does anything illegal, but a lot of people that I talk to say to me, somehow the medicine called me. Somehow this called me. It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, you know what? I think I'm going to go do some psychedelics. It's most likely somehow either the childhood curiosity was opened up or they saw something. And what I do to sort of meet people halfway, and I had to do this with my mother, was I sat down with her and watched the Netflix documentary Fantastic Fungi.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, the stigma of towards, especially towards mushrooms, is poison, bad, whatever, and I had that. I remember as a child, mushrooms growing in my yard and me kicking them and horrible mushrooms, disgusting. Now it's like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I have a gnome in my front yard that I find mushrooms and I give it to the gnome. So it's once you watch Fantastic Fungi, my mother literally said, all this time I thought the mushrooms were the bad guys. Like the mushrooms can literally save the planet. And I went, yes, they can. And then there's another wonderful documentary on Netflix called How to Change Your Mind, which is based on the wonderful book by Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind. And he's got a 4-part documentary. And in that, he has one on psilocybin. And those are the ways that you break the stigma. And also by sharing my story. Look, it's sort of when people hear me and they go, wait a minute, hold on a second. Is this the guy that worked at CNN? And this is you know what I mean? He talks like a normal person, and he's a father, and he's a member of his community, and he votes, and it's sort of, they can relate. And that sort of breaks down that stereotype and that stigma. And the other thing is we have the science to back it up now, right? We literally have science that can back up people using psychedelics for PTSD, for depression, for eating disorder, for so many other things that are really, that we've had a struggle trying to deal with through either therapy or modern medicine. That why not explore, right? I mean, we're going to the moon, right?
Yeah.
Why not explore our own consciousness? So I think again, the stigma exists. The stigma, I think, is in a way is a bit good because, like I said before, psychedelics are not for everybody.
Yeah.
They're not. So I think if that stigma at least has some guardrails in place, but stigma comes from lack of education. That's where all stigma and everything comes from that. So like I tell people, educate yourself. You know what I mean? Watch some documentaries, see that there is science behind this. And then if the medicine has called you, try to find someone who can guide you. Right? Try to find someone who can, be a spotter, and help you. Right? Because that's, there's different ways to be able to open up that consciousness. And it's incredibly more important nowadays. And you and I talked about this a little bit, and I want to make sure that at least we touch on it. The mental balance of a solopreneur, right?
Yep.
That real, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. It's a real struggle to be a solopreneur. And sometimes we don't look for help. Sometimes we don't ask for help. Sometimes we don't tell people we're struggling. Sometimes we don't take breaks. Sometimes we don't, really take care of our mental wellness, which to be a successful solopreneur, that has to be part of the equation. It has to be.
Yeah. How do you find that balance?
Mindfulness, really being conscious, right? And again, I'm human, right? I
Yeah.
have faults. I make mistakes. You know what I mean? But it's that ability of of being mindful. And again, that's what the microdosing has taught me, to be as conscious as possible, right? To be
Yeah.
in that mind that if I want to cry, cry, right? That if I'm frustrated, okay, be frustrated, but figure it out. Live in those emotions. And especially us men, right? We were told for how many years, your emotions, check them at the door. Nobody cares about your emotions.
Yeah.
Nobody. No one cares. And especially in the corporate world. Especially in the corporate world. So now that we live in this hyper technology, hyper focused, lack of sometimes human touch world, it's more than ever that we need to have that human touch. It's more than ever that as solopreneurs, we need to have that community. We need to be listening to those podcasts that talk to us and say, hey, you know what? Check yourself also. Check your wellness. Check your mental balance. Take a break. Take some deep breaths. You know what I mean? Be mindful of where you are on a daily basis. Don't get consumed and overwhelmed, in all of the work, because your health is more important. Your mental health is much more important than anything.
Yeah,
You
no,
got to
that's
be
great
around.
advice. Because you can burn out in the corporate world too, right? But it's actually easier in the solopreneur world because there are no boundaries. I mean, you can work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You draw the lines, right? And if you don't draw lines, like you said, you run out of fuel. So I think that is a really, really important lesson. So
Yeah.
let me go ahead. So you're going to say
Yeah,
something
yeah,
else?
no, no. I was gonna say yes. It's how many people don't we know? Oh, I haven't taken a day off in years, and it's almost like a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
How how can how can that be a balanced life? Are you so you spent no time with your kids? You've taken no time to have a whole day with your child. Okay, interesting. So again, that's why that mental clarity, that mental balance has to be a big part of that business plan.
So tell me then, going on that thought, what advice would you give to somebody who is actually saying, okay, I'm listening to this and I'm like, I want to leave the corporate world and I want to follow my passion, but I'm being, I feel scared and uncertain. What advice would you give them?
One, yes, find your passion. Find your passion. Find a way to whatever that passion is, right? And this is where you live. Ravon Navakot talks about there's a couple of people who are going to be able to succeed as we move forward. One, programmers, because programmers are going to program everything, right?
Yeah.
The other was digital assets, right? So digital assets in the sense of, what do you have to give the world? What are you going to leave the world? What is it that you're an expert at? What is it that we live in a global environment, right? This isn't a local mom and pop shop anymore. This is a global store that you could potentially have, and whatever that passion, whatever that knowledge, whatever that wisdom that you have is, package it up, bottle it up, give some of it away for free, create your community, build your community, right? Offer them up things that they're going to sort of want more of you, and then bring them in through courses, through retreats, through we again set those buffet tables of wisdom, whatever your wisdom is, and go from there. Look, the corporate world is definitely a burnout. The solopreneur world is definitely a burnout. It's like I said, in that corporate world, we're on this ship that we're doing little things to make sure it's sailing, but it's not all up to us. The corporate world is there. So do you have the tenacity? Do you have the willpower? Do you have the desire? Are you willing to work seven
Yeah.
days straight? You know what I mean? But if it's your passion, then it doesn't feel like work. So find your passion, and I think if you can encompass that, if you can find your passion, manifest love you wealth, I think it'll be okay. I think we live in a wonderful world that it's a lot easier to be a solopreneur than it was 10, 15 years ago.
I totally agree. So let me ask you, what's your long-term vision for cultivating wisdom in terms of continuing to build your brand and expand your audience even?
I definitely I want cultivating wisdom to be the place where mostly people over 50, but that everyone, right, can go find honest, open, and objective information about psychedelics, where they can find a community of like-minded people, where they can find um, good resources, right? Resources that are reliable, resources that are doing it the right way. I'd love to see Cultivating Wisdom somehow use its energy to down the road create some type of center, one for veterans, right? I have a son who serves in the military. I know the benefits that psychedelics have had for people once they take off that uniform. So I'd love to have some type of center or be part of some type of center, even if it's just being on the board of somewhere where veterans can come and say, hey, you know what, let's start with some somatic healing, and let's maybe see if we can put you on a good microdosing practice, and then let's see if maybe we could do some community healing so you can empty out your cup. I mean, those type of things is how I want to create Love You Wealth, right? There's also, look, there's a lot of underserved, marginalized communities who might not ever get this message because they've been stigmatized. So, I dream about a Cultivating Wisdom center where people of lower income, marginalized communities who have been called to serve this medicine, who have been called to go back to their ancestral roots and serve these medicines correctly. Why not have something like that? So it's a broader vision. I think that psychedelics we're just at the doorstep of how they can change humanity if used the right way. And again, we're people sometimes in the psychedelic space we ask ourselves, well, why aren't we up here? Why didn't the FDA approve MDMA? And why aren't more people? Well, we're not up here because we're right here.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, we were down here. So it's all these little steps, and I think that Cultivating Wisdom is taking those steps. And look, it went from an apparel brand to then branching out to a voice to now being that microdosingover50.com where people can get this information, and I can talk to people who can really relate and get a sense that they feel what I'm going through. So that's where I hopefully see the company going.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I love the authenticity at the heart of your brand, right? I mean, I love that you sort of open the door and let people let their curiosity guide them rather than try and push it down their throat, which never works.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I absolutely love that. It's a
Thank you for
valuable
saying
lesson
that.
for anyone listening. Yeah.
Thank you
And
for
so
saying that. I appreciate
so
that.
now I may have screwed this up, but like so I want to ask you, like, what's the one piece of advice you would offer to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey? What would you say to them? I know we
So
sort of touched on a little bit of it,
so
but
so you know what? And this might not help in the sense of 10xing or 100xing or whatever xing,
yeah.
but it could definitely help you in the mental state. I would say set 4 alarms a day. Okay. You
Okay.
don't need to be perfect with these alarms, but you need to be consistent. At 11:11, your alarm is going to go off and you're going to take 11 deep breaths. Okay. You're just going to be mindful of where you are. If you're in a meeting, take them silently. If you're in a super meeting, wait till after the meeting, but make sure you take time to take 11 deep breaths after 11:11 in the morning. At 1:11, set an alarm so you find somebody in your contact list and you send them a voicemail that just says, hey, was thinking about you. Hope you have a great day. You might get some response. You might not get some response, but you might make somebody's day. At 3:33, the alarm goes off and you take 3 minutes to just shake it out. Do some jumping jacks, move, go walk around the house, go walk up and down the stairs for 3 minutes, but just take 3 minutes to have some movement. And then at 5:55, have the alarm go off and take 5 minutes to just reflect on the day. To just reflect on, was it a good day? Could I have been better? Could I maybe have spent less time on that one project and spent more time on this? Those alarms will take less than 10 minutes of your day, but they will get you in that mindful state of, let me just take a deep breath and get a sense where I am. Let me take a second and connect with somebody. Let me take 3 minutes and just move my body. Let me take 5 minutes and just be with myself. I think if we can do that on a consistent basis as solopreneurs, we can mitigate some of the wah that happens sometimes.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. In fact, I'm going to start doing that. And you don't even need microdosing to be able to do that four
No,
times a day,
no.
right?
And again, look, microdosing is just a tool. That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
As humans, we have these toolboxes, and whether it's cold plunges, whether it's cold showers, whether it's breathing, whether it's meditation, whether it's our nutrition, those are all wonderful little tools, right? Microdosing is just that. It's a tool.
Right.
And some, it can be used and harnessed if used the right way, like any other tool.
Absolutely, and can be abused or used well or abused, right? Like you said,
Correct.
and I
Correct.
love that
Correct.
you're all about responsible use. So
Yes.
that's a great way to sort of end on that note. I love that advice you gave, and I like to end with what I call a rapid fire round. So I'm
Yes.
just going to throw a couple of questions at you. Whatever comes to your mind, just say it out loud.
Bring it.
So if you could microdose with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
It's a great question. Um, I would love to microdose with Dr. James Fadiman because he is the godfather of microdosing. He was the one that really first started to gather information. So just to sit down with him and really, pick at his brain would be wonderful. That would be a dream come true.
That would be like a trip within a trip, if
Correct.
I may say.
Correct.
So, if your entrepreneurial journey was a TV show, what genre would it be?
I would be up there with the Golden Girls, somewhere like a comedy, just
I
a
actually
comedy
like that
type of
show.
way. Yeah, it would be something like that. George Lopez, I'd be speaking half in Spanish with an accent, something like that type of situation.
That's funny. What's the wildest marketing or brand building idea that you've had for your business that you haven't pursued yet?
You know what? I wanna be able to offer up supplements for people who are microdosing. Obviously, the substances used to microdose are illegal, right? So that's not what I. But I want to help people be able to supplement their microdosing. Different little supplements or different mushroom supplements that they can use. So that's something that's like right here. It's just how do we get it to market? Do we white label it? Do we try to manufacture ourselves? It's sort of, but it's there.
Okay. What's a personal mantra or quote you live by?
Manifest love you wealth, not F you wealth. That and the other thing, love, forgive, move forward. I think if we do that in life, if you love, if you forgive, and if you move forward, you breathe easier.
That's good advice. And what book or resource has been most impactful in your solopreneur journey?
Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Okay.
Eckhart
Great.
Tolle's The Power of Now, that sense of don't live in the past, not even 5 minutes ago, and don't live in the future, not even 10 minutes from now. Concentrate on this moment. And
The
I think that
present.
when you do that as a solopreneur, sometimes we get caught up in, oh my God, 3 weeks from now, this is going to happen. What can you do right now to mitigate that anxiety from 3 weeks from now? If you can't do anything about it, then there's not much you can do about it. So I think that living that power of now really helped me to look at this whole sailing by myself in a different way.
That's fantastic. I love that. And that's again great advice. So, Cesar, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story. It's been a really fun chat, and I really enjoyed hearing about your journey. And I think that our listeners will really enjoy it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for letting me share my story. Thank you for letting me share whatever little wisdom I could have shared. Thank you. Thank you for always cultivating wisdom, for solopreneurs, because it's really important, really needed. So definitely, my hat's off to you.
Well, thank you again, and I appreciate it. And it's a lot of fun. So it's not work like you said before. So
Awesome. Awesome.